Here we are at the beginning of the game. Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1. The show begins with the Night's Watch, with the gate opening up, and we've seen a few of the Night's Watch knights going beyond the wall, going deeper into the forest, but something looks eerie, and sure enough, these knights bump into will supposedly be our main antagonists through the 8 seasons, the White Walkers. White Walkers makes way through mostly all of the nights at the Night's Watch, but left one guy to survive, and he pretty much deserts the Night's Watch. And during this series, in this time period, if you are caught deserting the Night's Watch, your punishment is death. So soon enough, he gets caught in Westeros or Winterfell, somewhere around there. Ned Stark, we cut to Ned Stark capturing this guy and pretty much sending him to execute him. And sure enough, he gets executed. But right before he gets executed, Ned Stark asks the guy, "Do you have any last words?" And he tells Ned Stark what he's been saying for hours, that he saw the White Walkers. They're back. And tells Ned to tell his parents that he didn't mean to be a coward. And after that, he cuts his head off. But in this scene, we see, these characters will start following or get into. We see Jon Snow, Brandon Stark, and Robb. And Ned, after the execution, he talks to Bran and tells him, "Do you understand why I did this? Why?" And Bran said, "Yeah, I understand. He's a deserter." So he's like, "Okay." Just pretty much this episode and this season, it's just pretty much getting us introduced to these characters. So we cut back to Winterfell when we see Ned Stark's wife and all the Starks. We see Sansa, we see Arya, who, later through the series, Arya becomes a freaking badass. Like, oh my god, super badass. But here, she's still a kid. Even it shows a little sign that she's even a badass at this young age. Like, out shooting with a bow and arrow her brother, Bran. just pretty awesome. But we cut to Winterfell, and they're getting ready to make way for the king from King's Landing. He's supposed to be coming to Winterfell. And we see them come. Everybody's greeting the king and his wife and their family. So the king, we see at the beginning of this episode, gets to Winterfell, is friends with Ned Stark. They were buddies through the young days, their childhood, and Ned helped him with his rebellion against the Targaryens. and his friend, the king, Baratheon, they come and visit. And this is when we see the Lannisters. Cersei Lannister, who is the queen, and we see Jaime, the night guard, the night protector of the night guard. Yeah, and everybody, are, even the Starks, are kind of amazed by him because he's known as to be a badass knight. But he has this stain, this nickname called the Kingslayer, which we'll get more into that later on through the series. And we meet his brother Tyrion, who's the imp, and pretty much my favorite character in this series. Just the way he is, the way he's such a smartass, but very intelligent. And we see the Hound, Sagargan. Sorry, I can't. Just it's hard to pronounce his name. Sagorgan. Yeah, I probably butchered it, so forgive me. I'm just gonna call him the Hound. We see the Hound, and then we see Joffrey, their son, who, oh my God, he is a little bastard. Through this, through later on in the episodes, you get to see how vicious of a bastard he is. But we get introduced to them, and after we see all of them, Ned's best friend, Baratheon, asks Ned to come with him to the crypts because during this rebellion they had, we don't see, but we hear about, his sister supposedly was kidnapped and raped and died, and Ned's best friend was in love with her. So they go to the crypts and he visits her, and you know, you can tell he really misses her and puts you know, a feather on her. Pretty much the stature is supposed to look like her on her hand. And this is when his best friend asks him to come to King's Landing with him to be his hand. And Ned is kind of relentless to do it, but then he decides, yes, to do it. And on top of that, he asks, let's join our houses. I have a daughter. He said, you have a daughter, I have a son. Let's marry them. So that sets that up. So we cut to Jon Snow talking to, Tyrion, and they have a little chat and all that, you know, pretty much telling Jon, don't feel bad if they call you a bastard because, in his eyes, they look at him as a bastard, you know. He gives Jon this line saying, all imps are bastards in their father's eyes. So it kind of shows you that in this series, like, Tyrion knows what Jon's going through. It says, don't feel bad about it, use it as armor, because it will never hurt you. Then we cut to a different land. When we meet the badass mother of dragons, Daenerys Targaryen, and her brother Viserys. Which Viserys is fucking prick. Like, right away, this guy's an asshole. Well, they're 3,000 miles. I really don't know. Probably 3,000 miles, 5,000 miles across the sea from King's Landing. And Viserys' goal is to get an army and take back what was his, King's Landing. So he pretty much sells his sister to Khal Drogo, who is a Dothraki, this group, this clan of warriors who are fiercest fighters. Pretty much we see that. We see her get married to Khal Drogo, and so he can align himself with them so they can help him get the, you know, get to King's Landing, or have, pretty much have an army and start building an army. Then going back to Winterfell, Jon talks to his uncle, who is Ned Stark's brother, Uncle Benjen, talking about he wants to be at the Night's Watch. He wants to be at the Night's Watch. And he tells his father, Ned, can I, pretty much go to the Night's Watch, and, pretty much says yes, you can go. Pretty much accepted, yeah. So on their way, when they go on their way to King's Landing, we'll see in the next episode. But pretty much he would go with them as they're heading to King's Landing, because somehow it's the same pathway. But after that, we cut to Bran jumping, or not jumping, but jumping on the wall, because he's like, at the time he likes to climb, so he's climbing everything, climbing up this big tower. When he gets to the top of it, he sees Jaime Lannister and Cersei doing what they're not supposed to be doing when it comes to brothers and sisters. And then next minute, they see him, they stop, and you think everything's cool, and then Jaime says these lines, "Things I do for love," and push Bran's out of the window, and the episode ends with Bran falling. So we don't know if Bran lived or died at the end of episode 1. So that's how episode 1 ends. But what I have to say, seeing this in the first episode, it got me hooked. It got me hooked. Like, I need to watch this. I was hooked. The betrayer, the backhand, like, just seeing all these stories of different characters, and just being absorbed by this time period. I love that time period. But yeah, this is my review of Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1. I hope you like what you hear. If you do, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I catch y'all on the flip side.